Are you a small business owner that is confused between the difference between the domain name that you have for your website and what the heck website hosting actually is? Well, if this is you, we are going to explain all of that in this video today, and I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. I've worked with over 500 companies over the last 6 years, most of which are local, small to medium-sized business owners, and I can tell you every single time, about 9 out of 10 times, most people are like, Adam, I have a domain and I have hosting, and they think they're one and the same, but they are not. So we are going to dive through the differences between what a domain is, what website hosting is, and some important and key things that you need to understand about the differences. Because if you don't understand the differences between what your domain is and what website hosting is, there's likely some confusion as to what your online presence actually is, and it could lead to some issues, especially if you're using a marketing agency. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is really the domain name process. So I'm going to do a little bit of a screen share right here where we're going to specifically dive into how you can get your domain set up, everything that is entailed in that process as well, and really what you should consider when you're signing up and getting your domain name for the first time. So as we take a look at all of those things, the first thing we want to essentially get started with is going to a platform. In this video, I'm going to use NameSilo just because it's the platform that I've used for the last couple of years, but you can use GoDaddy, you can use Namecheap. There's so many different places where you can go and get your domain. Now, a lot of these domain providers can and potentially will also have hosting included in there. Me, typically, I like to have them completely separate just in case something happens to one, you have the other in another platform. But in theory, you could have them in the same platform, but just because you have bought a domain does not mean it comes with hosting. So as you are getting started with your domain, you are going to come to one of these sites, and if you don't already have a domain name, you can go and start the search right here. So let's just say I had a roofing company called Adam's Roofing Company, and I wanted to have a domain name with that specific keyword. Well, a lot of times .coms, especially the ones that most people are looking to get, are usually taken. Now, you can try to go buy it. You can try to negotiate a price through a third party for that domain. Obviously, if you don't know the person that owns that domain, I typically would try to go find something different. So I might try to do Adam's Roofing Company, STL, something like that. I'm here in St. Louis. I'd go buy that. I'd walk through the whole process. I would get good to go. Now, once you have this domain set, right, you have everything that you need. I'm just going to go to my account. You'll see a bunch of blurred out active domains. I have a ton of different domains. These are usually websites that I own and operate for our own businesses. But long story short, this is where all of the structural behind the scenes data goes from your domain. Now, through this domain, you can launch your website and connect to the hosting. You can also set up the DNS records and the name records to be able to, get a G Suite account or an Outlook email account for your business. So info@adamsroofingcompany.stl.com. If you don't have a branded URL email here in 2024, I definitely recommend that you get that started. It's super simple and easy. But a lot of times where people go wrong is they have this domain right here, like adammcchesney.com, for example. And then they're like, okay, I can launch a website. And then they're launching a website, whether they are building it on their own or they're working with a marketing agency. And then the marketing agency or the website provider in which the platform is that you're building it out on, which is if you're using WordPress, for example, which is the gold standard, you're using GHL, you're using a lot of those platforms that are out there that most people use, they're going to say, okay, great. Where's your website being hosted at? Now, you can host your website on GHL. I typically like to use Siteground, which is what I'm going to show you here in a second. But the difference is you have to pay for that hosting. It's not included. Now, if you're using Duda, if you're using Squarespace, if you're using Wix, if you're using Weebly, those are private protected website platforms that have their own hosting and maintenance inside of there. So you are in theory going to be able to and set up your hosting through them specifically. But again, if you're using WordPress, if you're using GHL, if you're using some of those other platforms, you are going to have to set this up separately from your domain. So I have everything good to go here in my domain. Everything is ready to go. That's when the website is getting launched, I need to figure out hosting. Now, transitioning over to hosting. So again, there's going to be so many different platforms that you can host your website out on. Now, this is the one that I've used personally since 2020. I've tried out some other ones. Not only is this super cost effective, but I have had, knock on wood, very little issues across the board when it comes to these websites that we've had hosted on there. I've hosted our clients' websites on there. I've also hosted my own company websites on there, which you'll see here in a second. So once we're logged in specifically to this account, which we'll get that logged in here in just a second, we are logged in, and the nice part about it is it can be rather confusing. You have a login to the back end of your website, right? You have a login to the back end of your website. So if I was to go to adammcchesney.com, right? And then I was to go to WP admin, for example. And again, this is going to be if you have a WordPress website, you have this username, email, and password you need to go ahead and submit in here. Now, of course, you can use LastPass or somewhere to save it, but it can kind of be confusing, and especially if you have multiple websites and all that stuff. I like to just have it simple and easy in one place. So once you're in here, you can literally just go and then get your website linked up. So if I was going to launch a new website and link that up to the domain, or I had an existing website that I needed to change the primary domain, I would put that new domain in here, and then it would tell me, hey, here's what you need to update your DNS records to, or your name records. So then that way the new website can then go live. But cooler than anything else, I can come back to this specific aspect here, and I can go and I can access my website immediately with one click of a button. And so it's literally taking me already to my website right there. And so think about it like this. Your domain is basically your gateway into getting a website. In order to have your website up and running at all times, you need to have it hosted somewhere. And through your email, right, your website needs to be hosted somewhere. So even if you don't have a website up and running, you still do need to have your DNS records and some sort of hosting going in order to basically send and receive emails. So it's super important that you understand the difference between just having a domain and having your website hosted on the internet somewhere. Those are two completely different things. And again, we're talking mainly WordPress, Go High Level, those types of platforms that are open-ended CMS content management systems, which again is what I typically do recommend if you want the best results and the best design of your websites. So this is kind of overarching, going and basically showing you the differences between all of those things. Now, domains and hosting, as we already mentioned, they're completely different. But if you don't own your domain or own your website hosting, this is where things can get very, very wonky. And so what I want to show you is, again, this domain, for example, you can buy it for like $17 a year, and other platforms might have it as low as $10, all the way up to maybe $20, depending upon if it's a .com or .net or any of those things. I always recommend to the business owner, own your domain, have it in your account. If you don't, or if you don't at least have access to that account, and I've seen it time and time again, people reach out to me all the time, Adam, I was working with a marketing company, I was working with a freelancer, and now I don't have access to my domain. That is a terrible, terrible place to be in. Now, a lot of people typically do have access and they own the domain, which is great. You need that. But what they don't always own, or they don't always have access to, is the hosting. So you try to leave your marketing agency, right? and your marketing agency is pissed off because they're being douchebags, and they end up locking you out of your website, and you have no way to get the files or even know where it's being hosted at, because all you had was access to the domain and maybe, if you were lucky, back-end access to your website. So this is why I always recommend. Now, if you're working with a marketing agency in the past, like we have offered free website hosting and maintenance as a part of our SEO plans. We did that all of the time. Now, that's a great option. But I'm here to tell you as well as these plans are not as expensive as you think. So even if you do have that as an option, which again, if you're trusting the marketing agency and you know who you're working with, like great. But this is something to also keep in the back of your mind. So if I go here and I want to sign up for a new hosting plan, as long as I have only one website. So if you have like, let's just say you have, 4 or 5 websites that you're doing, of course, you're going to need the Grow Big plan here. But the Select plan for the first year is literally $3 a month. And if you need to go up to that larger plan, it's $5 a month, so $60 for a year. And then what you'll see right here is $30 after that, or $17.99 after that. So it's not very expensive. Now, the one caveat here is there are plugins that you will see on the back end of these sites. And so you will need to periodically go back in and update these plugins. And what you need to basically do here is you basically come in there and like click update now. Super simple and easy stuff. But if you are a little bit worried about that, right, you can always pay a company anywhere from $50 to $100 a month to maintain your website and basically keep an eye on it. And sometimes they'll include hosting in that as well. Totally fine. You just want to know, where is my website being hosted? Is it hosted on Siteground? Is it hosted somewhere else? And what's the login? How can I get access to? I can send collaboration or client invites out on that software, so that way you get access to exactly what you need if anything were to ever go wrong. So it's not to say you absolutely need to have your own hosting plan, but just know it is affordable, and just know it's not the end of the world if you do it on your own. There are still marketing companies that are going to work with you. A lot of times people are taking this pricing right here and upcharging you like $100, $150 a month. Now, again, if that includes maintenance, if that includes backups and security, like that's a whole other situation, and it's totally, totally worth it. But at the end of the day, there's a massive difference between just having a domain and having hosting. That is, the domain is your gateway to basically having a website whenever you want it. The caveat is you need to have it hosted somewhere, up on the internet, up on the cloud, all that stuff. And that's where hosting comes in. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope this at least saves one person the mistake of understanding or misunderstanding the difference between those two, and that they are two completely different things, albeit they do work in hand. If you got value from this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment. And last but not least, we teach a ton of personal branding and digital marketing strategies over in our free Facebook group. You're going to see a link to that group in the description of this video. Go over there. You'll get a ton more incredible information in bite-sized chunks, daily content, live weekly trainings, and more. And remember, authority isn't built overnight. It's built over time. We'll see you next time.